The wind came hard that night. Not the kind that whispers through trees or rattles windows, the kind that strips the warmth right out of your skin. He felt it the moment he stepped out of his truck, collar pulled tight, breath visible in the air. The streets were empty. Most people had the sense to stay inside, but he'd worked late again, and the drive home was what it was, cold, quiet and routine. Until it wasn't. He saw it under the street lamp on the corner of Maple and 4th. A small shape, motionless, pressed against the base of the pole like it had crawled there and given up. At first he thought it was trash, a discarded coat, maybe, or a bundle of rags someone had left behind. But then the wind shifted, and he saw the fur move. Just barely, a flicker of something alive. He slowed the truck and pulled over, engine still running, headlights cutting through the snow. His first thought was kitten, a stray, frozen, probably beyond saving. He'd seen it before. Winter was cruel to the small and the lost, but when he crouched down beside it, his breath caught. The markings were wrong. The ears were tufted. The paws, even curled and stiff with cold, were too large, too broad, and the coat, mottled and spotted beneath a thin layer of frost, wasn't the soft tabby pattern of a house cat. It was wild, unmistakable. A bobcat, a kitten, no more than a few weeks old, barely clinging to life. He didn't think. He didn't call anyone. He just moved. His coat came off in one motion, and he wrapped the tiny body inside, feeling the faint flutter of a heartbeat against his ribs. It was so cold it felt like holding stone. He ran back to the truck, cranked the heat, and drove faster than he should have through empty streets, one hand steadying the bundle on the passenger seat. Just get it home. Just get it warm. That's all you can do. The house was dark when he arrived. He fumbled with the keys, pushed through the door, and went straight to the bathroom, the smallest room, the easiest to heat. He grabbed towels from the linen closet, set a heating pad on low, and laid the bobcat down as gently as he could. Its breathing was shallow, eyes closed, body limp. He worked through the night the way you work when there's no choice. Slow, careful thawing, warm water on a cloth, dabbed along the paws and belly. A syringe of diluted electrolyte solution, dripped along the gums in case it could swallow. He didn't know if any of it would help. He wasn't a vet. He wasn't a wildlife expert. He was just a man who couldn't leave something to die in the cold. Hours passed. The house stayed silent except for the hum of the heating pad and the soft tick of the hallway clock. He sat on the tile floor, back against the tub, watching the rise and fall of the bobcat's ribs. It was so small, fragile in a way that felt wrong for something wild. One night he told himself, "That's all, then I'll call someone, a rescue center, someone who knows what they're doing." But even as he thought it, he knew it wasn't that simple. He didn't hear Milo at first. The cat had a way of moving through the house like a shadow, silent, deliberate, always watching. But when the man looked up, Milo was standing in the doorway, ears forward, eyes locked on the bundle of towels in the center of the floor. The man's chest tightened. Milo was 8 years old, calm and predictable, the kind of cat who ignored most things and tolerated the rest. But this wasn't most things. This was a predator. Young, yes, but still wild, still something that didn't belong. "Milo, no," he said quietly, reaching out a hand. But Milo didn't hiss, didn't arch his back, or flatten his ears. He just stepped forward, slow and careful, head lowered, whiskers twitching. The man held his breath. Milo crossed the tile floor and stopped inches from the bobcat. For a long moment, he did nothing, just watched, studied. Then, with the kind of gentleness the man had only seen Milo show to injured birds or sick strays, the cat leaned in and began to groom. Small, deliberate licks along the bobcat's frozen ears, over the top of its head, down the side of its cheek. The man sat frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. He had expected fear, aggression, retreat, but instead, Milo groomed the bobcat like it was his own, like it had always been his. The bobcat stirred, just barely, a twitch of the ear, a faint shift of the paw, and Milo kept going, steady and patient, his purr a low rumble in the quiet room. The man exhaled slowly, something settling deep in his chest, something he couldn't name yet, but could feel taking root. This wasn't supposed to happen, but it was happening. And somehow he already knew. There was no going back. Morning came with pale light, filtering through the curtains. The man woke stiff, still sitting against the tub, and realized he'd fallen asleep on the bathroom floor. But when he looked down, his breath caught again. Milo was curled tightly around the bobcat, his body forming a crescent of warmth. The bobcat's breathing had steadied, stronger now, deeper, and its tiny paws were twitching, stretching against Milo's belly like it was testing the world again. The man didn't move. He just watched, afraid that standing up would break whatever fragile thing had formed in the night. Over the next few days, Milo refused to leave the bobcat's side. He brought toys from across the house, a crinkled ball, a feather wand, a small stuffed mouse, and laid them carefully beside the makeshift bed. Whenever the bobcat made a sound, Milo was there instantly, meowing softly, pressing his nose to its fur. The man tried to separate them once, thinking it was safer. He moved the bobcat to a crate in the guest room. Milo sat outside the door and cried, not the sharp yowl of frustration, the low broken sound of grief. Within an hour, the man gave in and opened the door. Milo slipped inside, climbed into the crate, and curled around the bobcat again. After that, the man stopped trying. By the end of the first week, the bobcat was eating soft food from a dish, its legs steady beneath it, its eyes bright and alert. Milo taught it things the man never expected: how to greet with a slow blink, how to play without claws fully extended, how to headbutt gently, instead of pouncing. But the wild was there too. The bobcat climbed curtains with startling speed. It pounced on shadows with precision no house cat could match. And when it played with Milo, the man could see the difference, the coiled strength, the sharpness of instinct. Yet Milo never flinched, never pulled away. He met every wild impulse with patience, every sharp movement with calm. And the man began to realize this wasn't temporary anymore. Something unusual, something beautiful, was unfolding in his home. He sat on the couch one evening, watching Milo groom the bobcat's face while it purred, a sound deeper and rougher than any house cat, but unmistakable. I should call someone, he thought, but he didn't reach for his phone. 3 weeks in, the bobcat began to change. Its legs lengthened, its shoulders broadened. The soft kitten fur gave way to a sleeker, more powerful coat. When it played with Milo now, the man could see the weight behind each movement, the raw strength building beneath the surface. Milo didn't seem to notice, or maybe he did, and simply didn't care. He still groomed the bobcat's ears, still curled beside it at night, but the play fighting grew more intense. The bobcat would pin Milo to the floor, jaws open wide, and the man's heart would stop, until Milo squirmed free, unbothered, and head-butted the bobcat like nothing had happened. The man knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. He made the call on a Tuesday morning. The wildlife rehab center was kind but clear. The bobcat was healthy, strong, old enough now to begin transitioning back to the wild. They could take it within the week. The man hung up and stared at the phone in his hand. From the hallway he heard Milo meowing softly. He looked up to see the bobcat padding toward him, Milo trailing close behind. They moved together like they always had, Milo leading, the bobcat following, their bodies in sync. How do I explain this to him? The man thought. How do I tell him it's over? He built an enclosure in the backyard, tall fencing, climbing platforms, space to move and stalk and explore. The bobcat took to it immediately, leaping from perch to perch, crouching low to watch insects in the grass, ears swiveling at every sound. It was thriving, growing into what it was always meant to be. But every evening, without fail, the bobcat would press itself against the glass door that led into the house, waiting, watching, looking for Milo. And Milo would sit on the other side, paw pressed to the glass, eyes unblinking. The man stood in the doorway one night, arms crossed, watching them. The bobcat was wild now. There was no mistaking it. The way it moved, the way it watched the trees. It didn't belong here anymore. but letting go meant breaking the bond Milo had formed. A bond Milo seemed to need just as much as the bobcat. The man closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. Is this the right thing, he wondered, even if it breaks both their hearts? He didn't have an answer. But spring was coming, and the decision couldn't wait much longer. Spring arrived with soft rain and green buds on the trees. The bobcat was full grown now, sleek, powerful, undeniably wild. When it moved through the enclosure, the man could see what it had become, a predator, sharp and confident, built for the forest waiting just beyond the fence. The wildlife team came on a cool morning. They were gentle, professional, patient. The man and Milo walked the enclosure one last time. The bobcat approached them slowly, pressed its head against the man's leg, then turned to Milo and touched noses, a long quiet moment that felt like goodbye. Then with one final look, the bobcat walked into the open forest under the watchful eyes of the rehab staff. The man stood at the edge of the trees, long after it disappeared. Milo sat beside him, silent, ears forward, scanning the shadows. The house felt wrong after that. Too quiet, too still. Milo wandered the rooms crying softly, not the sharp yowl of hunger, but the low broken sound the man had heard once before. He checked the glass door, waited by the enclosure, searched the hallways like something had been lost. The man lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd made a mistake. 3 weeks later, he checked the trail camera he'd set up near the tree line. He scrolled through hours of footage. Deer, raccoons, nothing unusual. Then he stopped. There, at the edge of the frame, stood the bobcat, bigger now, healthier than ever, coat thick and gleaming in the moonlight. It wasn't looking at the forest, it was looking at the house. The man leaned closer to the screen, and then he heard it, faint, but unmistakable on the audio. 2 soft meows, responding to Milo's cries from the porch. His throat tightened. That evening he opened the back door. Milo was already there, waiting, and across the yard, just beyond the glow of the porch light, the bobcat stood watching. It didn't approach fully, didn't cross back into the life it had left, but it stepped close enough, just close enough, for Milo to reach forward and touch noses one more time. The bobcat held still. Milo purred, and then with a quiet huff of breath, the bobcat turned and slipped back into the trees. The man closed the door slowly. Milo stayed at the window for a long time, watching the dark, and the man realized the bobcat had never really left. Not completely. He'd stayed only one night, but he'd left a bond that would last a lifetime.